Yes, no problem. The three of us kind of got together and decided to kind of compile our experience across the three organizations and really provide you all kind of some considerations that we've seen for compelling and legitimate text. And we've in our collaborative kind of jam session, we found kind of three overarching themes, and they really start from before you even craft a message, when you're actually sending a message, and then the universe along, outside of the message that you're sending. So starting with kind of clear message goals and using actionable language, reinforcing legitimacy within messages, and then timing your messages alongside larger service delivery and outreach strategies, and really thinking about text as an extension of your service delivery, not just marketing and communications, right? We know that these are kind of critical updates that we can provide to people. So the first thing that we wanted to kind of talk about that I already saw in the chat, and so I think that this is very top of people's minds, is really choosing your messages thoughtfully, and that we should really be thinking about using text sparingly because it is such an intimate medium. It's in people's pockets, it's in their bags, it's in their home, kind of different maybe than paper mail and email. Also, kind of the tenets of not amplifying stress and prioritizing safety first when selecting messages. And so making sure that we're not sending, updates that will stress people out, but that they're actually going to be helpful to people. And that we're also prioritizing safety. So we're sending messages that are, not going to make someone feel unsafe, such as giving them steps to leaving an abusive relationship. And I think the key of this slide really is that this blue box of texts are really good for kind of three things where someone needs to be reminded to do something, that they need information at a specific date or time, or if your service is able to share critical or useful status updates. And so really tying messages to action of telling the recipient what to expect, and clearly stating, the issue and the expected response, and, really focusing on what do I need to tell someone in order for them to do something else? So framing messages to encourage action. So you're pointing directly to where the recipient can complete that action. So if you're providing a link, it's going to the application, not where they have to read more information about what they need to do. If it's, providing that phone number so they can take action to call. If there are multiple paths to completing action, right, we know that there's multiple service points. You can call, you can go into the office, you can go online, providing people an explanation on why they might take a certain path or over another. If you see to the right here, perhaps you're giving an update around someone's EBT card being used by someone else. You can add, call this number if you need a new one. But if you need a new card immediately, it might take a couple of days or weeks to get something in the mail, go to the local office. So providing people kind of certain pathways over the other. And then clearly explaining the consequences of not completing the desired action, making sure that you're not doing this in a dire tone, but that you're really helping emphasize to people kind of what happens if they don't do the thing that you're asking them to do. The other kind of, I think, basic here foundation is being clear and concise. Texts are technically, 160 characters for one text, but really, we don't have a ton of real estate. 300 characters seems to be the standard for ensuring that texts are readable, so it's not too much information, and they're also deliverable. So you're sending text through phone carriers, and if things are too long, they could be throttled or not delivered on time. So keeping them short but not sacrificing clarity, saying only one important thing per message, and then focusing on to make sure you have the most essential instructions to complete that action or to have that kind of message. And then using a neutral and professional tone. I think CFA has proved this through A/B testing that people follow through with professional tones rather than being overly friendly. So you want to kind of state your business and not kind of over placate to people. And then I'm going to turn it over to Julia to kind of talk about how we can use behavioral science to kind of make compelling messages.
Great, thanks, Emily. Hi, everyone. I'm Julia Kosov from Benefits Data Trust. So continuing, the topic of creating compelling messages, another way to do that is by incorporating behavioral science principles into your messaging. If you're not familiar, behavioral science is the study of economic decision-making and human behavior. And even if you haven't heard this term before, you've likely already been marketed to with these principles, both in for-profit and not-for-profit marketing. Every election season, you're likely bombarded with messages like, make a plan, thousands of residents have already voted, when will you vote? That's behavioral science and it's used for a reason. Utilizing these principles is likely to increase follow through. Next slide. There's some transitions here. Yes. So now there's so much to the world of behavioral science, but here are a few ways that we recommend incorporating it into your messaging. So implementation intention is one that we use often. Dropping in a when will you renew, when will you apply, when will you call can help increase follow through just because it's been proven that if someone makes a plan, they are more likely to follow through. Psychological ownership. Feeling a sense of ownership can influence behavior. So saying something like claim these benefits that belong to you can really kind of empower the person and increase follow through. Social norming, you've probably seen this one a lot in vaccine messaging, the voting messaging that I've just messaged. Humans are social creatures and that compare themselves to others, and we're definitely influenced by others' behaviors, including language, how X many people already have done this can definitely increase follow through. And lastly, I want to call out loss aversion. So individuals perceive losses more powerfully than gains. So if we frame a message as, don't lose out on this, as opposed to you can gain this, that can be a little bit more effective. Now, shifting gears, I want to take a high-level overview at how to make sure your messages are compliant and build legitimacy with your beneficiaries. So in our current day and age, there are plenty of fraudsters out there, that are getting more and more sophisticated. And while there are regulations that are trying to be put in place by carriers and FCC and the like, the sad truth is that these fraudsters will never go away. The icebreaker at the beginning of the message just proved that we're always going to be subject to some sort of spam messaging. So with that, the best thing that your organization can do is try to make your messages as compliant and trustworthy as possible to try to set yourself apart. So we have a message here on the screen. It's just a sample message that an agency might send to a beneficiary who's due for their SNAP recertification. So the first thing is you definitely want to identify the sender of the message, whether that's the agency themselves or a program name that is going to be familiar to the client. Personalizing the messages can increase follow through as well as building legitimacy. Identify the purpose of the messages. The first question that clients are going to ask when they receive a text message might be, how did they get my number? Hopefully not, but why am I getting these texts? And can you click one more time? Thank you. So I'm going to cover these two together. So when including URLs, which is, super common in messages, whether pointing to the actual application or a website where there's, some sort of follow through that the client has to do, we recommend that you use long URLs whenever possible. We understand it can be really tempting to use short URLs like bit.lys or tiny URL just because there's so little real estate in a text message and every character really counts. But unfortunately, if you go the route of bit.ly or tiny URL, they can make your messages look more suspicious as well as potentially be flagged as spam by carriers. If you really need to use a short link, I would recommend looking into creating a branded short link that is just unique to your agency. Include applicable terms and conditions to build trust and verify legitimacy. So if you want to point to your terms and conditions or privacy policy. This one's big, provide clear opt-out instructions and make sure this opt-out list is being continuously maintained. And this one you've probably seen before, include the standard message and data rates may apply disclaimer. And now I'm going to pass it to Genevieve.
Hi, everyone. I'm Genevieve from Code for America. And I want to just start by saying, so support and agree with everything that's been shared so far. Really grateful, Julia and Emily, to get to share alongside you both. Also really, really welcome questions in the chat as I'm kind of going through the next couple of slides. Recognize that there's a lot of expertise in the virtual room. So excited to have this conversation and share a little bit about what we've been continuing to learn on this front. So building on what's already been shared, some of our learnings in the last year have really focused on how important it is to also reinforce legitimacy beyond the message itself. So beyond a specific message in a specific point in time, we're really thinking about trust building as part of sort of a continuous messaging practice and building the strategies that help reinforce that trust over time. So for the last year, we've been partnering with the state of Connecticut, and we've been helping them start sending texts to SNAP clients and other social service benefit recipients. And I think notably, this was a brand new communication channel for the state. So they'd never sent texts to their clients before. And so a lot of what we focused on at the start of the partnership was understanding from a client's perspective, what would it be like to start receiving texts from the state for the first time, sort of out of the blue? And what would really help them to trust that the state was actually sending those texts? And so we spoke with a lot of clients in the state of Connecticut, and we heard from them surprisingly unanimously that they wanted to know that the state was going to text them before the first text was sent. So if we had sort of a hot take to share, I think that would be it, that the trust building, we believe, really happens before that first text is ever sent. And so specifically, some of the learnings that we took away from that, using all your existing trusted channels to get the word out there that your state agency is going to start sending text messages. And also alongside that, sharing what the message will actually be. So in our case, we shared with clients ahead of time that we'd be sending texts with reminders to renew their benefits. So that looked like sending mailers to clients, putting it on the website, letting the press know, updating the phone IVR message, sort of using every trusted established communication channel that the state had available to them to let clients know that they would be starting to send texts. It also meant that, if you've communicated in the past about texts not being something that you're sending, to actually update those messages. So Connecticut had been pretty clear with clients, kind of to counteract a lot of the scam texts and spams that are out there, saying we are not texting you. So if you get something, that is likely a scam. Well, now this was a pretty big change in that message for clients. And so we had to really be intentional about letting clients know what to expect. Also important to think about every staff member that might be communicating with clients. So making sure that they know about the texts before they happen and preparing them to answer any questions from clients, because some clients will have questions and they might be calling in asking, I got this text, is this legitimate? What should I do? So preparing stuff ahead of time is really important. We actually held 4 information sessions so that every single frontline staff member in Connecticut got to hear about the pilot. They got to ask questions. And then we actually created a 1-pager for them to reference as we move forward. And then this awareness extends to partners and vendors as well. So if contractors manage your phone line, really helpful to make sure that they know about the text and they have those talking points in hand too. And then you can also let your community-based organizations and advocates in the communities know as well, so that they can just additionally support you and support clients. And then in all of these channels, important to really reinforce what the text is going to be and what to expect. So specifically, we made sure to mention things like, the state would never ask for personal information like social security numbers, PINs, things like that via text. So all really helpful in terms of setting expectations ahead of time. So we can jump to the next slide. So we also learned that it's really helpful and important to publicize what clients should look out for to sort of verify that the state is actually the sender. So you can't prevent scammers from mimicking what you do, but you can spread awareness of markers of legitimacy to help empower clients to know what to look out for to combat scammers. So when we were looking to start sending texts for the first time in Connecticut, launching our texting pilot, we actually saw a text scam timed for when our pilot was starting. So we'd said really publicly in the media and social media, in all of these channels, Connecticut's gonna start sending texts. Well, scammers saw that and they actually timed a scam around that same time. And so we really tried to empower clients ahead of time so that they could combat those scams. So some things that we implemented based on client feedback, it's really helpful for clients to know what phone number the text will be coming from. So we heard from clients that using a well-known number is really helpful. So in Connecticut, we use the same number as the benefits center, where they're often calling to get help with their case. And lots of clients actually said they already had that number saved in their phone. So that was really great. And they knew that those texts would be coming from that number. And then the message can also include information that only the state and the client would know. So you could address the client by their first name or include the last 4 digits of their client ID number, which is not considered PII. And then also something to note, so if you're implementing only one-way texting, so you're not actually responding to clients via text, which is the case in Connecticut, then you can use the auto replies as an additional tool to really reinforce legitimacy. So you can have the auto reply to the text say something like, yes, this is the state agency. We don't read and reply to texts, and we will never ask for your social security number or PIN number. And then just jumping back to the scam that I shared that happened in Connecticut alongside our texting pilot. So because we actually took all of these steps to prepare clients ahead of time, really equip them to combat those scams, the state actually received 0 reports of anyone falling prey to that scam, which was incredible and just really wonderful to see that all of those steps were effective. So we can jump to the next slide. So we believe that messages are credible when they match what the reader expects to happen. So in addition to communicating about the rollout of the messages themselves, it's also really important to look at how you implement text messages as a whole, so over a client journey. So by tying your outreach to particular moments in the client service journey, your messages will seem more legitimate because they're linked to what clients expect to happen and sort of the next steps of that process. So in the same way that clients get official notices when they have to interview, when they submit documents, or when they get approved, clients should be receiving text messages during those moments, and they should be seen as part of service delivery rather than just one-off outreach. We can jump to the next slide. So as you're building out your full journey of text messages and planning the logic and the technology to send them, it's really important to test your messages with clients and with eligibility staff. This makes sure that the messages that you're sending cover all the scenarios that a client could be in. So it not only does that, it ensures that your message language and timing is really accurately reflecting what they would expect at each given moment. So for example, what message gets sent to clients if they miss a deadline to complete a required interview? If they have alternative options, then you can send them a message saying so. And then also really helpful in that scenario to make sure that they don't get a separate message saying that they've been denied. So by first looking at these moments in a client's journey, the logic that actually sends the text messages can kind of be set up accordingly. And we can jump to the next slide. So finally, just want to encourage all of you to go beyond thinking about only your program's text messages to make sure that your entire agency is aligned in using the same language and the same format for messages. So I know we chatted about this a little bit as a group up top, but just the importance of consistency across programs, it will really reinforce the legitimacy of your agency's text as a whole. We know that clients are often enrolled in multiple programs at the same time. And so ensuring consistency across all of those messages really represents that whole person approach. So you can do that by creating sets of cross-program message templates. And so the templates really reduce the burden of checking specific words and grammar. It's also more amenable to automating the messages along the program service journey. So all of those messages that can be happening throughout enrollment and renewal for a client, it really reduces that manual coordination work. And then it also reduces the potential for human error as well. So in this work with Connecticut and other states, we've learned a lot about trust building through texting. And we love helping states launch texting in a human-centered way. So just want to share that and say, please reach out if you have questions about this. Happy to keep chatting. And then also want to share that we hope to put out some more public resources on planning for text message journeys in the new year. So excited for that work ahead as well. And I think with that, I'm turning it back over to Emily.
Forever looking for my unmute button as I share my screen. But thank you to the presenters. This is kind of a summary of the things that we just shared with you all. So kind of a checklist of what to do to send compelling texts and legitimate texts. Wanted to kind of pause here and say both what did we miss, or what questions do you have about the content that we just shared?